25. 1. Supreme Magus. Chapter 671 Impending Threat Part 1. You'll get used to it, dear, Gierney said, trying to ease her daughter's mind after seeing how pale Floria had become. I have the same problem with Camilla. The poor woman pukes and cries a lot when we run into certain types of crimes, but she's getting stronger for it. I'll tell you the same thing I told her. Don't bottle up your feelings, otherwise one of these days you will snap. Find someone you trust and share your burden with them, as I do with your father. You could talk to Kyla. No way, she's already got a lot on her plate. I don't think she could handle the pressure of knowing how conflicted I am about this mission. She needs to believe that whatever happens, I'll be there to protect her. Floria said. Then you could talk to Lith, Gierney, casually, suggested, as if it hadn't been her goal from the beginning. In the Lost Cities, he has faced worse things than some human experimentation. It would be a perfect opportunity for you two to reconnect after avoiding each other for so long. Is Lith still airtight or has he finally opened up to you? Nothing has changed. Floria's reply came out too fast to be believable. That's good to hear, Gierney said, as if Floria had told her the opposite. Yet don't get carried away. He still has a girlfriend and one should never overestimate the feelings that constantly being together in a life or death situation can induce. They die as fast as they are born, so tread with caution. Mom, I'm not going to discuss that part of my life with you. The sudden blood rush to her face told Gierney that something was indeed happening. Sure, dear, do you mind passing the communicator to Kyla? I would like to cheer her up too. If you call me again in 6 hours, you would have the opportunity to talk with your father. While Gierney talked with her daughters, Camilla used her civilian amulet to inform Lith's family about his well-being. Hearing about it from Barian never meant much to them. He could only tell them that he was alive and on a mission, which they already knew simply by looking at Lith's rune on their amulets. When someone died, their imprint on a magical item disappeared and so would their communication rune. Camilla, instead, told them how he looked well-fed, in perfect health, and even in his normal spirits, so the mission couldn't be that bad. Since they had finished early, Gierney and Camilla could go back home for lunch instead of eating in a local restaurant. Gods, I've always heard that constables have to watch their backs, but we have so many soldiers in our detail that the only threat is that to my figure. Camilla thought. Long hours sitting behind a desk, delicious meals, and then when I get back home, I'm too tired to exercise. How the heck does Lady Erna's keep her hourglass figure with our line of work? To make matters worse, the lunch at the Erna's house was always a full-course meal, so Camilla would end up eating more than at any restaurant to not offend her hosts. I'm glad that Lith is with our baby girls. Those ODI gave madness a whole new definition, Orion said. Their forge-mastering experiments were as cruel as insane. The expedition members are lucky to have faced only faulty projects, otherwise they would have probably died. At those words, Camilla became pale, whereas Gierney's curiosity was piqued. How do you know what they have faced? There has been no report, she asked. When he called Camilla, his amulet sent all the data they have collected in encrypted mode to the research division and I'm a royal forge master, dear. You'll read my report once I'm done writing it, but I can spoiler you some things. Please do, Gierney nodded for him to continue. From what I have seen, everything we heard about the lost ODI civilization was an understatement. The ruins they are at must belong to the period immediately preceding their fall. Do you want me to leave? Camilla said. On one hand, she had no idea if her clearance level allowed her to hear such conversation, nor if she was capable of bearing it. On the other hand, she was dying to know what was happening to Lith. There's no need for such a thing, dear. We are in the same boat, both at work and for the pinch our loved ones are into. You deserve to know, Gierney said while holding Camilla's hand. Gods, I wish my mother was such a good, sensitive person. Appearances are indeed deceiving. When I first met Lady Erna's, I thought she was a monster. Camilla thought, moved by Gierney's kindness. Gods, my wife is a monster. She's playing that poor woman like a fiddle, Orion thought. I still don't understand why Lieutenant Yehaval now practically lives in our home, but if I know one thing for sure, by having Camilla listening to these kinds of things, Gierney is hastening the development of Lith's relationship. They will either break up or get serious soon. What were you saying about the ODI, dear? Gierney asked. That their experiments were a perfect blend of genius and madness. I received the data about 2 facilities. In the first one, there were the results of the ODI's attempt to forge master living beings. Orion replied. Do you mean to create artificial life? Gierney had heard countless tales about such nonsense, but aside from necromancy, no magic had ever been able to create a functional life form. No, I mean using light magic to alter the life force of their slaves. Carving runes inside their bodies, to use them as vessels for their forge mastering spells and make them akin to enchanted items. What, did they succeed? Gierney turned pale for the first time in years. Of course not. As you know, life force is very delicate. Even with all their experiments, the ODI only managed to turn their victims into living slave items, but both their bodies and lifespan were horribly crippled. They could live for just a few hours before dying. So it's not a feasible line of research, right? Gierney was worried about such an eventuality. Any mad tyrant would have made such human modification mandatory on both their subjects and prisoners, turning them into an unwilling army of spies. It would have meant the end of life as she knew it, making the army and all the security measures that had protected the kingdom until that moment useless. No, the biggest flaw of this kind of experiment is that the forge master and the vessel cannot be the same person. Two kinds of mana cannot coexist in the same body, so the victim soon dies of mana poisoning. What about the second facility? Jirni asked. It was equally disgusting. As you know, normal metals do not have a mana flow, which is the reason we bond them with mana crystals. They are not only needed to fuel the Forge Mastered spells, but also to help the relatively inert metal to withstand the magical energies without crumbling. Chapter 672 Impending Threat Part 2. In their attempt to artificially create Davris and adamant, the ODI siphoned life force from their subjects and forced it into common metals, in the hope that a mana flow would form as well. What actually happened was the creation of cursed items that instead of giving power to their user, they would actually take it away. The weapons crafted this way turned out to have the flaws of both metals and living beings. Like metals, they have no mana flow. Plus, like humans, they need to feed and sooner or later they die. You gave me a big scare, Jirni said. Based on Floria's early reports and your assessment, the ODI look like just a bunch of incompetent tinkerers. Nothing they did actually worked. Then why do you look so worried? Because you seem to forget that they managed to enslave a magical beast and it survived centuries. Also because the data comes from the hallways, where every craftsman would only exhibit prototypes and incomplete works. Those are things that prove the value of their crafter's skill but are disposable. The real artifacts, if there is any, are bound to be inside the buildings and they have yet to explore them. It's quite a terrifying perspective if you think about it. Also, I'm afraid because the ODI weren't just tinkerers, they had mastered light magic to the point that they were able to try and expand its boundaries. If even one of their experiments succeeded and the expedition team faces it, we can only hope it's a non-sentient artifact. Anything that is still alive after so many centuries would have all the power and the skill needed to do a lot of damage. Orion's outline of the risks that Kula posed made the rest of the lunch pass in worried silence. Even if Floria contacted them, there wasn't much besides a, be careful, they could tell her. Orion had just speculations about the severity of their situation, but he couldn't provide the expedition with anything useful at the moment. After the meal, Orion went back to study the data from Kula, while Jirni and Camila resumed their lessons. Besides investigation techniques and the constable's protocols, Jirni was also teaching Camila self-defense. Their sparring sessions were long, tiresome, and most of all, humiliating. Camila couldn't understand how a woman smaller, lighter, and older than herself could effortlessly throw her around as if she weighed no more than a dirty rag. The only silver lining was that they didn't spar often. Usually, at the end of a work's day, Camila was too tired to do anything but sleep. After the Ernest's family healer fixed all of the scrapes and bruises Camila had sustained during training, she couldn't wait to go home. Are you sure you don't want to stay for dinner? It takes a minute to add another serving and the guest room is always ready. Jirni asked. Thanks Lady Ernest, but the camellia needs to be recharged and I've yet to check the papers for Zinya's divorce. She hasn't learned how to read, let alone understand how the kingdom's law works. Without my input, her lawyer can't proceed. You could bring the camellia here and maybe our lawyer could help you. Jirni offered. Yeah, right, the only time I accepted, I spent the entire evening studying under your supervision. Then you woke me up before dawn for a sparring session that went on until breakfast and then we went straight to work. Camila thought. The camellia is the perfect excuse to get some personal space and some time to relax. I have enough of your boot camp. I prefer to keep the camellia at my home, so in case Lith comes back he'll know I'm okay and that I always think about him. She actually said. Also, I'm grateful for your offer, but this is a family business. I turned down Lith's offer for help, so you'll understand if I do the same to yours. Camila wasn't stupid. She was aware that if either Lith or Jirni got involved too much, Falmug would probably die in an accident. Despite the fact that she hated him deeply for what he had done to her sister, Falmug Sarda was still the father of Zinya's children. Her sister wanted the matter to be solved in a court of law, to give Falmug the opportunity to redeem himself in the future and maybe be part of their children's life. Camila respected her wishes and as long as Falmug played fairly, she would do the same. Returning to her apartment took her just a few minutes. The Ernest household had its private gate that led Camila back to Belius, and from there a city warp brought her to her neighborhood. Even if winter was almost over and the days were getting longer, after sunset the temperature would still plummet in the north. The streets were almost empty, and the few people still around were rushing to their homes. Camila could see her breath steaming while walking toward the building entrance, the key already in her hand. Now I understand why Lith hates Belius so much. Dimensional items are so convenient that once you get used to them it's like an addiction. Just a few months ago, carrying bags of documents didn't bother me, yet now. Her train of thoughts was derailed when she neared a corner and a strong hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her inside a blind alley. It yanked her so hard that she was about to fall face first against the concrete, but her training kicked in. Camila let go of her suitcase, that went crashing against the trash bins and used both of her hands to grab the arm over her shoulder. It allowed her to regain her footing and to use the strength of the pull to perform a shoulder throw. The unknown attacker was bigger and heavier than Jirni, but compared to her, he opposed no resistance. Their backs slammed hard against the ground as Camila never let go of the arm, making it impossible for them to break the fall. She twisted and pulled the limb, breaking it in 3 different points. Their shoulder, elbow, and wrist shattered, making the assailant curl up in pain. Camila stepped back, to look at her enemy from a safe distance. Her hand went to her pocket, searching for her communication amulet, when a second assailant struck at her back with a metal pipe, sending the amulet flying. The impact was strong enough that would have broken at least 2 of her ribs, if the orichalcum skinwalker armor she wore didn't take the brunt of the impact, dispersing most of its energy. She turned around just in time to intercept a second hit aimed at her head. Camilla infused the armor with some of her mana, making it turn back into its metal form. When the pipe struck her arm, the resulting impact was akin to hitting a mountain. The weapon slipped away from the injured hand of its wielder as Camilla's now metallized foot kicked the man's groin, emitting a squishy sound. His eyes rolled, showing only the white, and his mouth foamed in pain. Camilla was tempted to look for her amulet, but she was afraid a third assailant might have been stalking her. Cursing Belius's array which prevented her to access to the civilian amulet that she had forgotten inside her dimensional ring, Camilla put her back against the wall while checking her surroundings.